It is 7:32 on Thursday, January 20th. Call this special meeting of the Darien RTM Education Committee to order. We have some guests tonight. I am grateful to Superintendent Dr. Byrne, Chairperson Robin Nelson, and Dublin of the Board of Education. Thank you for coming. This is wonderful for us. And Dr. Byrne is now Secretary. Thank you. First item is just a personal report. I just want to again say thank you only to Dr. Byrne and the board, but also to everyone. I know we've had a lot of meetings this month. I think that it's been really helpful, at least for me, to have the budget presentation split up into presentations rather than Super Saturday. I thought that was really helpful. And I thought that to everyone who's sending, feedback and questions, thank you. That was great. And I think that what we're doing here tonight is wonderful. I think it's going to be much better to ask questions and have them answered in real time rather than some of the things we've done in years past, like back and forth with spreadsheets and questions over email, which I think is, more difficult. So again, thank you. And I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight. And I was going to note that as we go through and talk about the budget for 27, I think it makes sense to go ahead and ask our questions the same way they were presented. So let's stick with curriculum and instruction and do questions from the first presentation first, and then we'll move on to special education and student services second, and then we'll move on to if folks have questions about operations, athletics, capital budget. If that works, I think that might be the most efficient way to structure our conversation. And then once we're done with that, we're just going to take a minute to discuss upcoming meetings and the calendar that's coming up for January, February. And that's really it. So we want to go ahead and get started with our budget conversation. I don't know, let's see, if you want to start with curriculum and instruction in schools. Anyone would like to start a conversation or a question or a comment? Please be my guest.
I have a thing that I still don't understand. It's not a direct budget question, but it oversees all the aspects of education. And that is, I need a better understanding of MTSS.
Okay, so MTSS, it's been called a lot of different things over the years. Years ago, it was called AIS. In some states, they called it RTI. In Connecticut, I think we've called it SRBI for a number of years, but it's essentially creating a framework that, number one, the first tier of, and it's a 3-tier structure or concept, is tier 1, which is instruction and support for all students. Tier 2 is the level for students that need additional support in some capacity. And tier 3 is students that need a higher level of support. So these are all within the context of general education, but it's looking at what we do in the schools through the lens of that 3-level support.
So this is in terms of affecting the budget at all. It's not, we've had another name for the same thing.
Yes.
And so
this is what SRBI was for many years here in the district in Connecticut.
This is only reading, right?
No, it's everything. And Connecticut has actually put like personal behavioral stuff in there as well. So, it incorporates the whole child.
Yeah, so I'll just back up very quickly. I appreciate generally that the goals of the budgets are really well articulated here. The focus on students' excellence, on academic opportunity, and focus on teaching and learning are critical, and I appreciated the way you guys structured the discussion. Regarding the curriculum and instruction part, the 5 elementary instructional coaches, this is a big investment, over $600,000, but I think this can be very powerful. This is a comment and then there's a question coming. This is a coaching individual of our teachers, right? So we're privileged to have the financial flexibility to do that. and it beats professional development seminars. I think one-on-one coaching is powerful, and I think that Dr. Fedigan's comment on coaches in other aspects of our lives, in sports and also professional, it was very powerful and resonated with me. Now, you can also find a scenario where this effort can backfire, where instead of empowering and educating the teachers, it will rob them of initiative and could disenfranchise them, right? So that which could then impact their performance in front of our youngest students. So the one thing I would ask you is to have some kind of mechanism, whether it's an teacher interview or some other, where you hear 360 feedback, not only from the coaches, but also from the teacher.
Absolutely.
So I guess the question is, how is this program designed, right? We currently have teachers who are responsible to the principals, right, on elementary level. So are these coaches who do they report? They report to Dr. Fedigan or to the?
They actually will report to the Director of Elementary Education, Jennifer Falcone, who reports to Dr. Fedigan. But we have a built-in evaluation process for it. Dr. Fedigan talked about one of the ways to assess a change like this, called the concerns-based adoption model. And it really takes a 360 view and looks at an intervention or a change and measures whether or not it's having the intended impact. And there's a structured process to doing that, which involves surveying, collecting data, and really analyzing it. But you are 100% spot on. One of the reasons why we're structuring it the way we are is because we want it to be successful. So the coach is being deployed out of central office and reporting directly to Dr. Falcone is because if you assign them to a building, what I've seen backfire in these models is they become helping teachers in the school. So they become close with the people in the building. They get handouts for people. Someone will say, "Oh, can you give me some resources on this?" And while that's part of a coach's job, the essence of the coach's job is not just providing resources to people. So I liken it to a helping teacher model where you assign them to the building and they cover all that kind of stuff. We don't need that kind of support. We need to increase teacher skill, and coaches with the right approach can do that.
Yeah, can I follow on to that question? Yeah, I guess it was a question. So I'm just curious because I've listened to, and Joanna Walsh said, "Oh, they're doing that in New Canaan," and she talked about 2. So you've come up with 5. So I'm curious, why not start with 2 and build, and add, if it's successful, add to the next year? How you came up with the number 5?
To be effective.
Okay.
I mean, with 5 schools and the number of teachers that we're looking to
So
support.
it was the idea.
If we did it with 2, it would take us years to have the impact.
Yes.
Yeah, I totally understand. I've actually, the data is so clear on coaching as the most effective method of professional development for teachers and in supporting any industry, that the only way to do this is to do it right. Otherwise it will fail, or just take forever to see the effect of the change.
So then will that, I think people ask this question, so the coach that is assigned, they'll rotate, they're not always going to be at 28 first Henley, so they'll have a bird's eye view from.
So we'll be looking across, when we do the searches for the coaches, we're going to look at the skills that each of the individual coaches bring to the table.
Okay.
So I've had coaches work for me that work across 5 grade levels or 6 grade levels. In my last school district, we had a K-2 literacy person. We had a 3 to 5 literacy person. Our math person worked across K to 5. It was all, and we had tech people that worked across K to 5. It was based on the person's skill level. So that's how we'll deploy them.
Do the coaches stay in the district? Is it a 1-year term? Is it a 5-year? I mean, do we know how long we would want?
Hopefully, as long as I'm here, because the learning never stops, and the growth that you want from your teachers and from your program, the coaching should exist. It's not an antibiotic for a cold. It's something that should be there all the time.
Okay. And is it something that we want to add also to like the middle school and high school, or it's just an
Well,
elementary?
we have people that serve in those, basically in that role now with our department chair people. So they do a lot of coaching of teachers, and the structure at the secondary level is a little bit different. So, you know, there could be a day where we look at some kind of coaching model at the middle level, but we do have people that work in classrooms with teachers to support them now. So it's not something I would be thinking about now, unless we did a complete restructure of some capacity.
This is new to me.
Last year, we come along.
You ever think about hiring within some of the
Yes.
teachers here in the
Yeah.
area?
Yeah, it'll be open for internal possibilities and external. There is a specific certification that people need to have in order to do it. So that will be part of the calculus. But yes, we definitely will.
Is this for math and reading, or is it both?
So it's primarily for literacy
Yeah.
at the moment, but elementary folks are typically pretty strong in across areas. So we envision looking at people that have multiple dimensions that they could work from for the long term. But the focus of this work right now is where our greatest need for improvement is in literacy,
Is that based off scores?
based off.
Like how are you prioritizing literacy over math? Is it based off of like our scores?
It's based off of where we are in the change process of our literacy work right now. We just did a tremendous amount of work identifying what our weaknesses were in literacy. We're moving to a science of reading focused instructional plan, and we need the supports to do that properly.
Anything more about teaching coaches?
So I'm just gonna ask another question. So is the salary approximately is about 150K per approximately per person? Is that what people typically get paid?
It's based on the average teacher salary.
I'm just saying,
that we look at. Yeah.
approximating. So, but I mean, is that what people typically get paid as coaches and what you've seen in the past, or
It totally varies based on their experience. So it's hard to tell until you actually have them in the pipeline.
Okay.
But they're master teachers, so they're coming
Right.
with really strong teaching background.
And you mentioned like, so do you have a pool of candidates versus using an agency or any sort of?
Now, we do a search like we would search for any other teaching position. So we use some subscription services.
Okay.
Frontline, which is our HR portal, and OLAS, and we'll be
No
recruiting
additional,
as well.
no additional is needed. It's what's in place.
And poaching is a very effective method.
Well,
Poach the coach.
referrals and
We actually had a terrific coach in that was working on the new reading program who came from a publisher. And I'm not usually a fan of coaches that come from publishing companies because they're usually salespeople. But I actually sat in a session with this coach, and I called Jen Falcone and said, we need to find out if she might be interested in interviewing with us for a coaching position. So I know Jen was working on that.
wheels already in motion.
Yeah, we have no what is the non-competes with HMH on there.
A couple of folks asked me questions about the dashboard for MTSS, and I wondered if you could just describe that a little bit, because I don't know that I understand it either.
Okay, so I would say that one of the areas that we need to really improve upon, and feel free to jump in, I know this is a topic, Robin, that's very near and dear to your heart, is we do not do a very good job of using data to inform our teaching. So there's lots of pieces to this. And I will say much of your questions so far and much of what we've put into this budget are really important foundational pieces. So you need to put all of these pieces together. It's like my little visual of the pillars of what makes us function. Those are really important foundational pieces to get the end result that we're looking for. So we administer a fair amount of assessments, particularly with our elementary kids. And you assess for two reasons. You assess for grades, or you assess for learning and teaching. You want those assessments to either inform what you're doing with kids sitting in front of you in a classroom, or you want the assessment to give you a number that you could put into Aspen, which is our portal where grades go, or on a report card. The value to that kind of assessment for grading is very limited. The value to the assessment for teaching and learning is probably one of the bigger things we're lacking right now. So, for example, connected to all of this is to look at a universal screener. So we give something called a universal screener 3 times a year. It's called, I believe what we use is AimsWeb. I think it's AimsWeb. And every child takes it and we get the data, but that data should be used differently than it's being used right now. So we're in the midst of an assessment audit. So we are looking at every assessment that we give to our elementary students across every subject area to determine what are the assessments we're giving, why are we giving them, are they for grading, are they for instruction, and determining which ones need to go, because we are over assessing kids. I can guarantee you that. And we're over assessing but not using the data well. Part of the reason we don't use the data well is we don't have a way of putting it all in one place so that it is usable by teachers. So we have some really talented teachers in the district. Over at Hindley, Catherine Takovich has created this incredible Google sheet that collects up all the data and is really usable for her as an intervention teacher to look at data across her caseload of students. It is not a practical solution. While it's an incredible tool that Catherine has developed, it's not a practical solution to use with lots of teachers and lots of kids. So the data dashboard is something that I know the board has been asking for, is a mechanism for us to collect our data, be able to easily analyze it, and use it to inform what we're doing with kids sitting in front of us, so that it doesn't take you 6 months to go through data to look at kids. You can sort it, you can pull it, you can organize it in certain ways. It will help you form your small groups for reading groups with your kids. It is not a tool for parents. That tool is still Aspen. The data dashboard it is solely for instructional purposes to help us use this data, one, after we identify which of the data is going out with the trash and which is staying, to use it well, to really impact kids. Many of our special educators in their roles have been collecting data and using it really well for a long, long time, but they're doing it with an individual child on a caseload that's manageable. When you get to 22 kids in a class or 19 kids in a class, you need a way to look at that data quickly and it's accessible and usable. So the other piece to that is the universal screener, which if you have kids in our schools now, or you've had kids, maybe not my child's age, but in the last 5 or 6 years, you've had kids in our schools, you may have heard that we give a universal screener, but you've never actually seen the results of a universal screener. Okay. You will see as a parent the results of your child's universal screener because it needs to be informative to you as a parent. Like when we use that assessment, we will send you a report that explains what we learned from it. So those are really important foundational pieces. So we have been going through an evaluation process looking at a bunch of different platforms. The next Wednesday, we have the final companies presenting to us. It's a full day process with the different data dashboard platforms. So we're excited about that. I love data. I do.
No.
We just need to use it well.
Not to simplify what you said, but it's very exciting to think about kids that need help getting, flagged earlier and faster. And that's wonderful.
And to know when an intervention is working or not.
Right. Yeah.
So we have an incredible consultant that's going to begin working with us, Devin Kearns. And Devin, I was introduced to through the Haskins Institute up at Yale University. And he is probably one of the foremost researchers in phonics and phonemic awareness instruction within the realm of science of reading. And Amy Fedigan had a planning call with him yesterday and came into my office afterwards. And talked about how excited she was for this work to begin with him. So he's starting with us this year, this spring, and he'll be working with us for the foreseeable future. And he created a system called data-based intervention, which is going to be really helpful to this work as well.
When you're sending stuff home, you said the results of the universal screening goes home. What kinds of information is the parent getting when they read that book?
So depending on the assessment itself, because different ones have different reporting features, it gives you a real profile of your child as a reader, or the reading component of it.
Okay.
As a mathematician. So, and it looks at the standards, and it will give you real information as a parent. So, is my child progressing well or not? Depending on the platform, they get one of the areas we're looking at is the information output, is whether or not that's as good as we want it to be. So that's part of our evaluation process.
So up until this point, my kids go to private school, so I don't know. Parents don't get any information?
No, they do. They get information, but the universal screener has not been one that we've been providing reports
We don't
for.
get names for.
No, but that's what I mean. I mean, my kids have to do MAP testing and I get those reports.
Right, so the map is a great, that's probably the best one on the market. It is not approved for use in Connecticut. Well, but I used the map in my previous school district,
Yeah,
so.
we get all of that information, so I
Yeah.
can't believe you guys don't get anything.
So it's partly a function of the assessment that we're using.
I see.
We were limited when this assessment was chosen. This isn't, unfortunately, our staff was limited in what they could look at because of what was approved at the time in the state of Connecticut. That list has expanded more, so there are more opportunities to improve upon it.
I do want to say that it wasn't hidden, like a parent could request it, would get it. It just wasn't automatically shared.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it wasn't the kind of thing that you could just email the teacher and they would send it. You had to usually go up to the administrator.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a
it's
process
sent,
too.
we get,
Yeah.
they take it and, a month or so afterwards, we get all the results.
You get a link or
Right.
it's loaded into the
Right.
port or whatever, if you're using
Right.
Infinite Campus or
Right.
Canva.
VR CrossFit, VR
Yeah.
CrossFit, yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's.
So I will say this is something that I'm extremely excited about in the board, and we started something which was a much more high level, kind of board level look at data, but that's not really helpful for teachers. And it's not helpful for them with instruction about what to do on a daily basis to, figure out how they can do that better, or if it's working or if it's not. And so I think the board is very, very excited about this development, because this is the way that we need to work to improve what we're doing. So
It's Moneyball
Track
for
it.
schools.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna go that far, but,
You certainly don't want to lose to the game.
yeah, that's true, that's true.
It's IEPs and that kind of thing would be.
All that
all
links
that
to
would
it,
be
yeah.
It's fair to assume continuity would be more consistent
Yeah.
across special education.
but this
And
is
it-
general education.
Yeah, but it's all students.
Yeah,
So-
so.
Yeah, I think lack of continuity in special education is something that would be, because providers can change.
So looking at how all the systems talk is part of our evaluation as well.
All right,
And it will, so once you start in this, like, we'll be able to see when you're in 7th grade, we'll be able to look back
Great.
on your progress since you were in kindergarten.
for your base percentage or.
What's interesting to me is, the excitement, the energy that you're bringing to us, the board and the administration, this is obviously not a business as usual budget.
No,
And I think the public in this town will be excited about that. Like, we are trying to be innovators for a change,
yeah,
which I like.
yeah, we're trying to build a foundation so that we can be innovators. There are some areas that we're catching up. We know that. But you build a foundation so that you can accelerate when you have that all in place. So I'm with you 100%. I'm happy to hear it.
Would it be okay if we moved on to special education and student services?
Just one quick question. I missed the conversation regarding the Teen Talk, which is supposedly a great program, right? And I think the cost, Teen Talk,
Oh, change them.
Teen Talk, yeah, and the cost in the middle school is doubling. Is it because we're doubling services or is the grant going away?
The grant, it's the grant impression, yeah.
If that's okay, we'll move on to special ed and student services. Does anyone want to start out with the question? I'm not looking at anyone.
On the table has heard me
Yeah.
on this topic over and over, but it's probably helpful to hear it as well. Special education is 30 million or 20% of the budget, very big piece. And this year's budget works partially allows us to invest because special education is flat. Normally it's grown 10 to 15%, especially because of the out-of-district cost. So, this year enrollment is down a little bit, which is obviously good news because some of the insourcing, some of the pooling with the different districts. But we still have more than 21% of our districts as a part of special education. I have data which may be 1 or 2 years old for the other districts. And I know the Dirk average is 16, New Canaan is 13, right? That's a 20.
That's old. Yeah,
That's old? Is it higher now?
It's much closer to us.
To us. Okay. All right. That's helpful because, even 20%, right, on 30 million budget, and I know obviously it's not linear, but these are big savings. And, I know a lot of these services are state mandated. And so I'm always thinking about it. Why are we higher? If we are, in fact, higher as in versus the others. And is it because we provide more services above what's mandated, and which is wonderful if we can do it as a community to support these kids? Or is it because there is it's inefficient use of resources or gaming the system, right? And really, so obviously there's a benefit to gaming the system because it's a part of special education. You get some more time on exams, more time on SATs and all this stuff, and people figure it out. And I just don't like that, and I also always think that the longer person is in special education, I would imagine that the numbers of folks would go down per class, right? Because you hopefully graduate from it as you get these services. But then when you look at the data, is actually there's more people in high school in special ed as a percentage of students versus the middle school. So, the simple question is why? Now, if you if we look at the data and Miss Klein says, no, we're very close to average, and but if we're not, this is a piece of the budget that's very big, and we should understand. And again, if we're doing more for the kids, good for us, right? But I guess that's a comment and sort of.
Well, there isn't a simple answer. What I will say is that our mandated and moral responsibility is to provide the supports necessary for all of our children to be successful in school. That being said, for some children, that's a higher level of support. For others, it's no extra support. And our system has to be designed so that we're giving the appropriate amount of support and then checking to make sure that that's the right support for children over the long haul. Yes, a goal of special education is hopefully at some point a child could exit special education because we've done a good job of meeting their needs. That's not going to be the case for all children. Some children need support their entirety through the school system, and we must provide that both from a legal standpoint and a moral standpoint. I would say that there are a few things that set off flags of concern for me in looking at some of our data. And I do think that some of the things we were just talking about will help us to potentially address that. It is clear that the decisions that were made around literacy and really looking at the science of reading research and transitioning our literacy program to where it is today was absolutely necessary. I think there are probably, when I look at, there was a presentation last spring, you probably know the data better than I do at this point, but that showed that we had an inordinate number of second graders and third graders who were being classified. That was where they were entering special education. When you look at that, that says a couple of things. It's a potential indicator that something has not gone particularly well in K and 1 for them. That in second grade, all of a sudden, you've got this big jump of kids entering special education. And often at that grade level in the elementary ages, when you're getting classified that far into your school year, it's often a reading issue. the question we have to ask is, was that reading issue a result of something we didn't do well as a school system, or is it truly a learning disability? And that's hard to discern at that point in time. But I do think, one, the deep analysis of our assessments to help us identify where we said, if you have a need earlier and be able to apply an intervention sooner, might help to reduce some of that classification rate at second and third grade. That's going to take time to do. But one, we've got the resource in place in terms of the program that we're delivering to kids. The coaches will add a layer of support to it that will make, I believe, a significant difference. And the collection and appropriate analysis and application of instruction from that data will also have an impact. So I think those are a couple of important pieces to look at. We're also looking at ways to work with each other. And it was discussed a little bit, and I know this was I think, Liza, you mentioned the consortium thing. So I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. The notion of a consortium is very, very early conversations with some of our closest neighbors who align with us from a values standpoint as school systems and are close enough to us that we could potentially, if we figure out how to do it, do some sharing of resources and programs that would be beneficial to the 3 school districts that or the 3 in total in the conversations we're having. So, for example, one of the things I would love to be able to do is create a literacy type program that would prevent families from feeling I need to send my kid to a special school. This is ways out. There's nothing in the budget that is leading to this work, but it is something that if we are able to create some new programs and offer them in our district, that may reduce the number of outside plans. We won't know until we do it. So we're in the very early stages of discussions with the leadership in New Canaan, Westport, and Wilton, I believe, to talk about, is this something that we might be able to do over the long haul that would support all of our districts, both programmatically and potentially financially, because if we have a program that we offer, that we have the ability to open up a few seats for our neighbors in New Canaan, and we have an arrangement where there is a set tuition rate just for the people in that consortium, as opposed to having to, New Canaan having to find a private school. And one of the unfortunate things of the hyper-capitalist society we live in right now is that a lot of private equity is investing in special education schools, which is really bumping up the costs of special education schools. And that is borne by districts and taxpayers. So trying to create things within, I know Katie and I were at a meeting of legislators, board members, and superintendents up in Westport a few weeks ago. And there were districts talking about programs that they've developed internally that are really helping them to support their children's needs and figure out some of these ways to not be behest to the private equity world. So that was a long, drawn-out question. But we, as I said, the foundational pieces, there's a whole bunch of things that we're trying to get in place right now that I think is, if we stay committed to it, and we do it right, we're going to have long-term lasting effects.
If I can just add something to that, and I'm guessing that this conversation has happened around this room too, but to reiterate that there's not a single profile of a child who's in special education. Of course. And that can range from someone who has an IEP and counts towards that 20% and costs the district $0, that they do not take any services, but that counts towards your, right?
Yeah.
So we also, like you mentioned, some of the extra time. So those are not services, those are accommodations. And it's important not to conflate the two, because accommodations are also not something that are direct services where the teachers are putting hours and cost us money, right? An accommodation is simply you know, a list of things that help a child access their education. It might be the use, it might be that a child has very bad handwriting, and so they're allowed to type their essays as opposed to handwriting, right? Again, that's like an assistive technology. And then the other thing I just wanted to say concerning exiting special education, that might be appropriate for some children and some not. So again, we have to be looking at, that's why it's called the IEP stands for an individualized education plan. Some kids, absolutely, a couple of years with specialized instruction, they've closed that gap, right? They're not just making progress, but they've closed that gap. Other kids have lifelong things, like I'm sure everyone knows, I have a dyslexic son. No program, no direct service is ever going to make him not dyslexic, right? Like that is just a piece of who he is. So we have a lot of kids that have a lot of those components from a whole spectrum of things, which is why we say it's complicated. There's not just one answer. That being said, Dr. Byrne has been very open to looking at how we have the conversation about special education in a more open way that is higher data driven. You know, I think that in the past we have kind of fallen into a repeat of reviewing what services we can offer kids as opposed to really understanding the population and the profile of our student body. So that's something that I would definitely encourage everyone to stay tuned so that we can have a more robust conversation going forward.
I have a comment I'd like to make. One of the things that I think is important that it happened in special ed is that kids learn to become advocates for themselves, that they know they can go someplace or walk into a new teacher and say, you know, this is my past experience. And the teachers understand that the student is going to be able to tell them something that this didn't go well or this did go well. And in terms of the extent of how long it goes on, I think one of the things that we've learned, and since I do college counseling, I see it, the number of colleges and universities that have special education programs in them is virtually 100% now. And that is something that is important for students to know and parents to know. I think really more parents to know. Just because your child has a special education, and my son could only take 3 years of math, it doesn't mean that college isn't coming, that life isn't going to go on the same way as it does for everybody else. But I think there has to be advocacy on the part of the kids, and that parents have to accept that. It probably does no better in many cases.
Yeah, and I can tell you that our staff, particularly at the middle school and the high school level, really encourage that. You know, when the kids reach a certain age from grade level, they're invited into the KPTs so that they can then talk about that. And so that's absolutely a goal, is developing that self-advocacy, you know, especially when you get in high school and there's not a team model anymore, that the kids know what their accommodations are and speak to the teachers and sort of say, like, you know, like it's better for me to take this test in the testing center as opposed to in this room. And that's really a goal.
Yeah, and it helps the teachers. You know.
Can I just ask quickly, I'll follow up on the consortium. I think that Shirley Klein mentioned that transitional programs might be like a beginning start to that. Is that, or so like we're talking about kids like 18 to 22.
Yes.
That's exciting. And that's kind of like one of their first projects maybe.
Yeah, well, we have to get ourselves to the place of actually becoming a consortium. But we worked with our neighboring school districts because, we have students in a transition program that go to New Canaan. What the consortium would do is put a little bit of a priority, but we have a close relationship with them. So that's been an opportunity for us already. So this is just taking that and making it a little more formal and setting up some clarity around what we're trying to accomplish.
I have one more question on special ed, but does anyone else have a question? Right. And then Katie, I feel like you asked questions about this in the meeting with Shirley Klein, but this is still confusing to me, the note that said continued developing clinicians' capacity to employ consultation frameworks to address intensive behaviors in classroom. And then the conversation after, this is confusing language to me, and then the conversation was a little confusing to me.
Yeah, we've been working really hard to get a lot of edu-speak out of our work as a and I think we, for the most part, we've done that well, but this is essentially, so one of the supports that you can have is as a child with a behavioral need is behavioral consult. So we have folks that we're training to be able to do that better. And that's part of the plan going forward. So you have someone in the building that would work with a classroom teacher. So it's not a direct service for a child, but they're working with the teacher to learn better interventions to apply in the classroom to help that child be more successful. Right now, to do that, most of that support is going to come from us having a consultant do that work in the district. We're trying to build the capacity internally so that we have folks on staff who can provide that support, who work for us full time and are in the building full time.
Okay.
So that's basically what that very jargony line.
No, and I think
It should be confusing because it is.
but no, but I think that's wonderful and definitely much needed, I think. Okay, thank you.
You are.
Does anyone else have, I don't want to move on until we need to, but does anyone else have special education or student services questions? So I'm going to suggest we move on to operations, athletics, capital budget. Anything else to talk about here?
Of course. I always have something. You spoke quite a bit at the meeting about the athletics handbook. And I'm wondering, and there was also some conversation, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it had to do with mental health. I'm wondering what goes into that handbook that, do parents see that handbook and are parents able to get, if they see a mental health problem, how does that, as opposed from athletics, the kid got cut or just became overwhelmed by what was going on? And we live in a town where there's a lot of pressure for, in athletics.
No.
And I think there's a situation that I have seen where the parents end up with some mental health issues because
Because of athletics.
yeah, because too many people are pushing in too many different ways. And I'm wondering, when you're writing this handbook, what all is in it? And are there things that we can do as a school system to make different kinds of stressful situations easier for both students and families? I don't know how those things can fit into what a school district does,
We can
but
try.
I thought I'd put it out.
No. So, all right, the handbook serves multiple purposes. One, it should give clarity to parents and students around the way things work in athletics. From how do you sign up for a team? What does the tryout process look like? What kind of feedback does my child get? And if I am cut, how does that happen? Do you show up and open a locker and there's a red flag hanging in it? Or is there a humane process that is fair and gentle and supportive to kids? I can't tell you how we do that right now. I could tell you how we think we do that right now. But if I was a betting man, I would bet that there's absolutely no consistency across teams and sports and levels in how we do that. The handbook is going to articulate that all and our coaches, and it's going to be. So those kinds of things. There will be a section on mental health and what to do if you need support. But additionally, our director of mental health, who's an incredible resource, has done some work with our athletes, with our teams and our coaches, and we're going to expand her efforts in working to do more direct work with the teams. on mental health, dealing with the pressure aspects of what comes, the disappointment that comes, and the things that are natural.
And we have too many parents or people in the community that think if you really want to go to college, you have to be a good athlete. And, you know, but we hear all the time about 12-year-olds being recruited for something, you know, 25 years down. That makes me crazy. But I do think that anything that we can put in a handbook that will help people deal realistically with what athletics are and how it affects children and how it affects their future.
That's a big community conversation. So on March 18th, my next book club it's a book about athletics, and it's being announced tomorrow what book it is, but it's a book on the world of athletics that we find ourselves in. And it's very current. It was just published in 2024, but it really looks at this issue of, you know, as a parent, one, you get told you have to be on 12 different travel teams, you have to go to showcases, you have to participate in every clinic that I happen to run as a coach and you happen to pay me for. Those kinds of things are part of what that conversation will be like about. But this handbook is going to speak to those things because no child or parent should feel like if they don't participate in someone's private coaching clinic, that will mean they won't have a fair shot of making it onto the varsity whatever team. I'll say badminton because I don't think we actually have a
Same choice.
but that's a sense if you walked around and asked parents and they will say, oh yeah, I know I have to do this program, otherwise my child's not going to get a fair shake at the team. That needs to be clear in the handbook that is not a requirement of our programs. And that handbook will serve, again, its students, families, and coaches to be clear. So it will articulate the standards of our programs that will now exist. So much like those operating standards that were a through line through every single budget conversation, we are going to have standards for the Darien athletics programs, and it's going to be clear to everyone. Because one of the first meetings I had was with a parent. I'll just say his first name, Tom. He came to talk to me back in July. He reached out. It was a lovely conversation. And he expressed frustration about feeling like his child did not make it onto a team because he did not pay the fee to participate, have his child participate in some private program outside of school. That shouldn't be the case. And if that is the case, that's something we need to fix.
Where's the buy-in from the coaches?
We pay the coaches, so yes, we're going to get buy-in for the coaches.
There you go.
Yeah.
May get it in words, but
Well, but then our job as an administration is if someone is not.
That's not only high school now. That's happening in
Yeah,
Well, it's
all
not
sorts
just
of
us,
areas across.
you're
But-
correct, you're fine.
but we're a public school system and we have a responsibility to our families and students. And as the employer of said coaches, they have a responsibility to us. And if I would hope we never end up in that place, but we may have to have some difficult conversations. And some really good training on those.
Will we write in the handbook? You kind of alluded to it, and then will coaches be involved in the handbook?
We'll bring some folks that will be helpful to the process. As my friends next to me know, I'm a little bit of a micromanager around certain things in communication particularly. So I'll be heavily involved in that process and we'll rely on some experts in mental health to support us in that. But we're going to bring different folks to the table that can help us produce a really good document. It's not too dense and long. We're not trying to, write War and Peace here, but it needs to be, and this is part of my micromanagement and communication, simple and clear. Simple and clear for everybody without lots of jargony type things. I've had lots of conversations, particularly with family about this. I have a relative who went through the world of all of this, and they spent so much money on all of these private clinics and club teams and 12 different club teams and playing the same sport all year round for years and years and years. And when it came time for the college process, the disappointment was incredible. And it was so sad to see because I predicted it. I tried, but it's hard with family. It's, I tried to coach them to be a little, question a little more of the whole process. But the time investment of time and money and traveling all over the place, and that wonderful relative of mine is now having a wonderful college experience without any sport. When she got past the disappointment, it was fine. And I'm watching it happen on the other side of the family now with, and it's unfortunate because there is a narrative that is out there that, and for some kids it is, and it's another book to read, another book club for another day. The college process is so insane right now. Yeah. Anybody that's lived through that or living through that, it's not rational.
No, it's,
and there is no silver bullet.
I do some college counseling.
Yeah.
And I always tell the people I'm working with, the decision you're making now is for 1 year. If you don't like it, at the end of the year, you can transfer or leave. It's not, there's a whole idea that now it's all you read about what is the ROI.
Yeah. But it is there, there's a really frightening book out there by Jeff Salingo, Who Gets In and Why. He's a journalist that embedded himself in some university admissions offices and kind of rips the Band-Aid off of that. And it's disturbing. But yeah, so back to the handbook. For us, it will be the document that clearly articulates the standards of our athletics program and to our families, our students, and our coaches.
Sounds great.
How long do you anticipate it?
It'll be ready by fall.
There is a handbook online right now.
Yeah, there is a handbook, so it's modification.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so it's not rewritten.
But like so many things, enforcement is the issue.
Janet.
Will cutting be included in the handbook?
The process for cuts and what that should be.
And why some have it and some don't?
Yep. And what that should look like.
Tell us about the book club. Who goes to your book club? What is it? Where is it?
You've had one, right?
So I've had one so far. Another good book to read.
Great choice.
It's such just something I like to do. I do pick a book that I think is relevant to lots of folks in our community and invite them to read it and then join in a discussion. It's very low key. The last one we did a couple weeks ago was at the Darien Public Library. I think the next one might be at the Depot on March 18th. I know that was the location we were looking at. And topics that are of interest to our families. The book we read was called Never Enough. It's about achievement culture, or more so toxic achievement culture. Jennifer Wallace, who doesn't live far from here, her latest book was just launched 2 days ago or yesterday. And my understanding is she's coming to Darien later this spring. Alicia Dad has been working to pull that all together with a lot of support from our community partners and the foundations in town to bring her to Darien. So that was one. I mean, I could see, a Salingo book on the college process being a book club. So I have another one on March 18th. So that will be 2. There'll probably be one more before the end of the year. But my hope would be to do 3 or 4 of them a year. And people come out if it's something of interest to them.
That's great. I love it.
We're getting close to an hour, and I just want to make sure we focus. If anyone has questions on operations,
I think my question around the bus, so
Yeah.
probably is gonna segue into that. Like, so why, good that it's not 7%, but why is athletics bus increase only 3%? Why doesn't, is there a match? Is it a different service?
You know, it's the same company. I mean, we do some coach buses depending on the distance of the sport. But it's just based on the usage and the contract that we have. It's
Can we get that rate for the school buses?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. And it also depends on how far we go in playoffs in different sports, and we're pretty successful, so that bumps up the transportation costs. I learned that in my past post. We had one year 2 teams that made it to the state championship, and we were busing these kids all over the state of New York for weeks upon weeks, and then Syracuse at the ultimate. So it was very expensive. Yeah, New York. Exactly. We have more teams making it further.
Just briefly on capital, the feedback I got from some of the elementary school age moms in my district. Just to comment, looking at the Chromebook purchasing, I know it's not a huge line item number, but I told them I would echo the sentiment that they don't really want Chromebooks in the hands of these kids. There are a lot of complaints from people who come to me. I'm not involved in the curriculum or any of this decisions and say my kid's coming home and saying they're on a Chromebook all day. Or there's some teachers who are notorious for being the ones where the kids are apparently, I don't know, this is not my child, on the Chromebooks and saying their neck hurts from how much time they're spending on the Chromebooks. So I was told to report that back, that there are some people who want no line item for any Chromebooks under the age of, say, 5th grade.
Right. So unfortunately, we have a system that we live in that requires us to have Chromebooks because some of the state assessments are mandated. That being said, part of what our technology department is doing right now is they are in the beginning stages of developing a new 5-year technology plan. And as part of that 5-year technology plan, I actually asked them to accelerate this piece. We're doing an analysis of our K-2 Chromebook usage and whether or not it was not necessarily a decision that was made. It just kind of happened because of COVID. We ended up in the world of a one-to-one device to student program. It would not surprise me. So one of the things we did in this budget is instead of purchasing Chromebooks for 3rd and 4th grade, which was the original budget request, we put the kibosh on that. So it is just purchasing Chromebooks for 4th grade, because I have a theory that when this study is done, we may be repurposing some Chromebooks from K-2 and pushing them up to use. And I don't want to get ahead of the work that the group is doing, but one of the things I'm hearing is it's not necessary to have one-to-one Chromebooks in K-2. I would say, though, that I have not seen elementary classes where kids are on Chromebooks for the point that their neck should be hurt. That I
have not seen that on a first-hand basis, but I'm echoing what I've been.
Yes.
I wanted to ask if, I think it's possible I've missed it, but if we're going to talk about AI at the board table and the programs that were mentioned.
So there was a presentation on AI done at the end of last school year.
Okay.
We started something new, you'll like this, Jen, called Parent University. And we had one last week on AI. So there are a lot of different ways we're getting the information out about AI. But I imagine that it will become not a standalone conversation again so soon after there was just one held, but we'll be hearing about AI in a variety of ways that it's being used across the system. So yes and no, but Tim did a really good job presenting about AI back, I believe it was June, to the community at a board meeting. And the Parent University was terrific. Those are really hard. Robin and Katie were both there. Those are really hard. We can't record them because they're not lectures. They're really interactive. And that was a fun one. We had about 35 participants show. So we'll have our next one coming up soon. I'm not sure what the topic is yet, but that'll get on the calendar as well.
I'll go back to the June.
And Tim, feel free to reach out to Tim, our instructional technology coordinator. He's very helpful in sharing information. Tim McGuire.
Was Brisk teaching the Google Suite document that you're referring to?
Brisk is one of the AI platforms that we're going to be that we're slated to get subscriptions for.
And
school
data
AI.
driven too, though, right? Like you'll be able to use, and that's what you're.
There's a lot of teacher controls to it, which is very helpful for that and school AI.
And school AI will be student facing, right? Students will have interaction with it.
Yeah. Well, as we train people
Yeah.
to use it, yeah. And there will be some teachers who will be the early adopters, and then we'll have on the other end of the spectrum, the laggards, but that's part of our professional development approach. And the 5-year plan will incorporate our work around this as well.
Any other questions? The budget looked good, so I was.
Yes.
I mean, my overall.
Talking about operations now?
Anything, because I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I want to touch on security and then self-insurance a little bit, and maybe as the communication director. The security, it's obviously a very big piece, that scares parents the most. Introducing third party just cannot be an impediment, has to be an improvement or at least same level. The order of command needs to be clear. So I guess my questions are several. One, I know last year's budget, we basically decided the director of security will spend half of his time as a floating SRO or SSO. Now we're replacing him with a third party. Will there be a floater as a part of that third party?
So he doesn't function as a floater SSO, but he does cover if there's a need in a particular building. We also have recruited some substitute SSOs who can cover in the buildings as necessary. So our current director of security does not cover that role at the schools as much as you might think. But we'll continue to have people who will substitute in those roles. This is a really good company that you don't just get one person, you're getting the full complement of all of their support. So when I think of today, we had an unexpected fire alarm situation at one of our buildings. The debrief of that would be something that would be really helpful to us with our new partners in Altaris, because they're experts in this, figuring out what we did well, what we didn't do well, and helping us to fix those protocols so that the next time there's an unexpected alarm on a freezing cold day, close to the end of the day at the middle school, we handle it really well and do it seamlessly. I'm not concerned. I've worked with the company before. They've got a stellar reputation. They understand the incident command structure. We are working closely with our police department in the evaluation and the selection of the company. I think we're really building that strong relationship with the police department as well to support that. I'm actually looking forward to the direction we're heading in.
Thank you. That answered a lot of security questions. Thank you. Self-insurance or anybody else?
You've got the.
So self-insurance, right? I just want to clarify that I understand this, right? So we had an option to stay status quo, which would cost us 19 million a year, right? 1 million more than we currently budgeting. That's a certainty of cost. Or we can self-insure, which in most likely scenario of claims would be $18 million. So we save 1 million a year, 3 million over 3 years, right? So that's meaningful. If we didn't do it, the budget, we would be all nervous because budget wouldn't be 3.9, but 5%, right? And then we talk about growth. So this is important, but we're still trading a certainty for some kind of expected outcome, right? So has Brown and Brown, which is our advisor, as I understand, sort of quantify the different scenarios under which, how can this play compared to the last 10 years of cases? They looked at it. And is the worst scenario for town budget the 20%, up to 20, because more than 20% of this 18 million, 3.6 million is really where our stop loss insurance kicks in, right? So 3.6 million is the worst we can come to town and ask for. Do I understand it correctly in the first year?
Well, they're all estimates. I mean, if we have a really bad claim year, I couldn't predict what that goes beyond all of our stop loss insurance and everything, then we would, of course.
Stop loss kicks in if there's more than 20% of losses, right?
Right, there's two different kinds of stop loss.
Right.
There's individual.
Right.
And then there's the collective, which is the 20%. So, yeah.
Right, so 20% of 18 million is 3.6. I just want to make sure we're not going to ask for 10. 3.6 is not great. It's sort of net 2.6 because we're saving the million, but it's not 10, right? So do I understand correctly? It's 3.6. Okay. So then I think Mr. Rudel says that it's going to take us 3 to 5 years to actually build that reserve fund to get it to 12%, which is some kind of standard.
Yeah.
However, in order to be entirely insulated, if I understand it properly, if we get it to 20%, the question is how long would it take us to get to the 20%? So we don't ever get to the situation when we get to top.
Yeah, I would think it's a 7 to 10 year process to get to that.
Now, last question for the employees, right? So employees currently are insured by whom?
I believe it's an Aetna.
Aetna.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't change anything.
it doesn't change for anything. So
Doesn't
it
change anything.
It changes plans, coverages,
No,
procedures. Whenever that changes, we changes as well. So
Yep.
therefore, okay.
Yeah, no impact.
So just kind of going off of that theme, like it's not like a gamble. We're not like gambling with the amount of claims that could potentially come in just because.
No, there's a certain level of risk, but this is a process or a strategy that lots of organizations use for cost savings. And if you get to a point where it isn't yielding the cost savings that you need, you could always switch back. It's not, you see districts or municipalities moving in and out of self-insurance depending on how things are going. And sometimes organizations, based on their claim history, are prime candidates for self-insurance, and sometimes they're not. It's all part of that analysis in getting to that place. And the analysis by our consultants is we're in a good place for that. 10 years from now, they might come back to us and say the opposite, which is we need to look at this differently. It all depends on your population. And, they take all sorts of factors, the age of your population, the general health of your population. But the bottom line is, for our employees, there's no impact to them. They still have the quality service that they have and the insurance that they need and deserve. And that is part of their employment.
Yeah, I agree. From my research, it seems like a very good idea. And that was kind of my next question is like, why haven't we done it? You kind of answered that just now. I imagine just each year and time it's different.
Yeah.
It has been done before in Darien.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's been analyzed before, and they haven't said, they said you're in a place that this is a good, meaningful change for you. Good information.
How do we feel? Any more questions for our guests?
I have the one on the communication director comment and advice or suggestion. So communication director doesn't directly promote the vision of the graduate, doesn't help the students, right? But it helps you. And I think that's valuable. Freeing your time, freeing you to think about all these things that we discuss is valuable, right? So I guess my only, it's a cost of a mid-career teacher, the way it's proposed. So this is not a cheap endeavor. Maybe my suggestion would be to pick somebody with the ties to the community who's really involved. So it's not only professionally skilled, but also it's maybe somebody who's got kid in the system. In fact, I would bet that there's probably a person at home with a communication degree who would probably do it for a fraction or for a portion of this cost. And
Are you putting yourself up there?
yeah. That's a good idea, actually. You don't want to read it. You don't already my emails. That's me.
We're not gonna do it. Oh, right.
Anyway, I mean, just somebody who's really involved and excited about it. So it's not only a job, but it's a mission.
I understand what you're saying, but I think the other side of that is there may be some risks involved by hiring somebody to do communications on the schools, that there could be some conflict of interest there that I would be concerned about.
Well, what we need is someone who's a communication professional and understands what that role is. Confidentiality is a big part of that role, and that will be part of the hiring and onboarding process that will work out. I've seen places where it's worked really well with someone in the community, and I've seen where it wasn't quite as effective as you would hope. A lot of it depends on the level of skill of the individual. But there's interest because people have reached out to me after the very first conversation from different places, people with good, solid backgrounds. So, but it will be a help to me. I can spend a lot more time doing the things like I did today, which is spend my morning in classrooms with members of the Board of Education and Administration, really looking at that incredible literacy work that our teachers are doing. That's new and important, and it's going to be a really impactful change for us in our community.
Right. Would an example be in like the situation that happened in Middlesex?
100%. Yeah.
There was a lot of rumors that went on. I'm like, oh, my 8-year-old, like, the school didn't burn down. Like, relax.
That is a perfect example.
More questions?
Do you anticipate, sorry, with that role, like you've obviously have it in the role I can perfectly envision in your mind, like there's no, I guess, wait, like it's either have this role this way or like not have someone do it 20% of their time or like scope it out where it's not a full-time person.
So based on the amount of time that I'm spending on communication and my assistant Cass is spending on communication, this is a beyond full-time, position. So, this is also someone who's not going to have, 9 to 5 hours. This is somebody who I'm calling at 4:30 in the morning when I'm deciding whether or not we're opening school because of a variety of things. Could be a squirrel causing a power outage at the high school, or a bird causing a power outage at Tokenique, or a snowstorm, or whatever. It's not a normal kind of job, but I can't. It's a full-time job. I'll be working on some communication when I get home tonight.
No, understand. And sorry, just to go back to the operations since I still have the mic. Why are we responsible for transitioning the buses from gas to propane? Like, why can't it be?
It's a mandate.
So why can't do we own the buses, or don't we lease them?
No, but we end up having to say to the contractor, we need to by law move to the propane buses, and they tell us what the cost is for that. So we make the decision of how many we can transition to a year. Which from an environmental standpoint is happening across the country. And electric is the technology is not there for the Northeast with the battery life. So propane has been the most effective one.
So can we, I guess, anticipate in the future that we would then going from propane to electric?
I don't, this is the alternative to electric. So right now you can choose electric or propane.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Unless the technology change. See it right now. Because we were doing the analysis because New York had, in my previous job, was an electric mandate. And they have not been able to get it off the ground because there are so many issues with, one, getting the technology that can happen because the buses can only go so many miles. And the charging, the infrastructure for the charging, or the weight of the electric buses was significantly heavier than the diesel or propane, and propane wasn't an option for us in New York, so.
All right, well. I just want to say again, thank you. This was, I know, lengthy, but so productive, and we're really grateful for your time. I'm just going to point out that we do have a meeting on the books for next Monday. I'm going to cancel that without objection from anyone, because I think we've done tonight. Want to point out that next Tuesday is the Board of Education public hearing. And next Thursday is the Board of Education vote on the superintendent's budget. And then we are scheduled to meet on Monday, February 9th. I will leave it on the calendar unless we do not have any business before the RTM on the meeting, which I believe is on the 20th.
But if I can just extend an invite, since you now have Monday off. We have this great section of the meeting called public comment, and in the public hearing, it's an opportunity to come and say things like perhaps you just said about feeling about the budget and the things that you've learned. It would be wonderful, because I know that the town, there's a lot of PTSD from past budget hearings and public comment. Feel free, if you like our budget and what we've put together, Tuesday's the time to come. If you're gonna come to a board meeting this year, that's the one to come to. And step up to the microphone.
That's this Monday?
Tuesday.
I mean, this week, yeah.
Tuesday at 7
Tuesday.
PM. It's a special meeting, so
Yeah.
you'll be home in plenty of time for whatever you need to do. Our meetings, they're much shorter than they used to be. Much more efficient and highly productive, with a wonderful board to talk with and tell them what you think.
And I would just like to comment on past budgets meetings and this year's budget meetings. I don't think I've ever been to as many meetings, and I'm not there, but I'm watching you. And I've never seen a time when you ask for public comment when there haven't been 10 people.
Oh, yeah.
in line
Yeah.
wanting to say something or make a point, frequently not helpful. So what I think, my gosh, this meeting's gonna be really short. It's not a line.
Listen, we have 11 people here. You can share some wonderful comments on Tuesday. We'd love to have you.
My only problem is I do it at a faster speed, and Jonathan Dunn is very hard to understand when I have it. I turn up the speed and I'm like, what is he saying? I can't hear him say. I'm just speaking that microphone.
I please have a motion to adjourn. All right, Jan and Karen.
All right, nice seeing everybody. Thanks.
Yeah.